There is a profound dignity in surrender, not the kind born of despair, but that which arises from trust. To leave something in God's hands is not to abandon effort, nor to resign oneself to helplessness, but rather to admit that there is a boundary to our strength, and beyond that boundary stands the infinite. Many of us have prayed not because we are noble, but because we are exhausted. We cry, not because we are weak, but because we have reached the end of what human effort can manage. And here is the strange mercy. It is often when we are most undone that heaven begins to work most visibly. You see, pain is not unknown to God. We do not cry into a void. Our suffering is not an echo lost in empty space. Every cry of the human soul ascends into the eternal, and though we may not hear an answer, that does not mean one is not given. Silence is not absence. The heavens may seem still, but they are not indifferent. The great temptation of pain is to believe that we are forgotten, that our tears are wasted, that our ache is solitary. But nothing could be further from the truth. Even the Son of Man wept. Even he cried out, "Why have you forsaken me?" Yet in that moment, the greatest redemption the world has ever known was unfolding. What we call impossible is often only what we cannot yet imagine. The walls we cannot climb are sometimes the very ones God intends to tear down. There are many things that do not yield to logic or force, but break open only at the touch of faith. And when we leave it in His hands, not as a last resort, but as our first trust, we place it into hands that formed the stars and shaped the seas. What hand could be stronger? What mind could be wiser? What heart more willing? Faith is not a lever we pull to force God's hand. It is a surrender of our will to His goodness. It is the relinquishing of control in favor of divine direction. The impossible does not bend to human determination alone. It bends to obedience, to love, to the wild and beautiful purposes of God. There are doors that will not open until we stop pounding on them and start praying over them. There are miracles that do not come dressed in glory, but disguised as patience, as quietness, as endurance. God sees, not just the surface, not merely the circumstances, but the heart, the longing, the private battle, the unspoken prayer. He hears every groan that words cannot shape. He numbers every tear as if they were pearls of great value. And when He moves, it is not always sudden, but it is always certain. What is broken will not stay broken forever. What is dark will not remain without dawn. But here is the paradox. To do the impossible, we must stop trying to be gods ourselves. We must stop carrying burdens we were never built to bear. We must admit we are dust, and trust the one who breathes life into dust. When the Red Sea blocked the path, it was not human strategy that parted it. When the dead were raised, it was not human hands that called them forth. God does not require our brilliance. He asks for our belief. To the one whose heart is heavy, to the one whose soul is bruised, He sees you, He hears you, and more than that, He is already working. Do not mistake the silence for stillness. Do not confuse delay with denial. Let the heavens do what only they can do, and as for you, trust, weep if you must, wait if you must, but do not give up. For what is impossible with man is still possible with God. God's silence is not His absence. He sees your pain and hears your every cry. There is a common struggle within the human heart when prayers go unanswered, when pain stretches on without explanation, and when the heavens feel like brass, silent and unmoved. In these moments, doubt begins to whisper its lies, that God is distant, that He does not care, that our cries vanish into the void. But the truth is far deeper and more mysterious. God's silence is not His absence. His stillness is not neglect. There is a presence that watches even when it does not speak, a compassion that feels even when it does not immediately act. To believe in this presence is to have faith not only in God's power, but in His timing, His wisdom, and His love. The pain we experience is not ignored by heaven. It is held within the heart of the one who suffered Himself. For if we could see the divine vantage point, if we could behold what God beholds, we would not fear the silence, we would marvel at the patience and the purpose within it. God is not moved by the noise of complaint, but by the voice of faith. Our cries, when lifted in trust and not bitterness, reach beyond the veil of this world into the courts of eternity. Every tear becomes a testimony. Every groan too deep for words is caught in the listening ear of the Almighty. He is not deaf to our anguish, nor blind to our burdens. He sees the mother praying over a wayward child. He hears the plea of the broken-hearted who cannot explain their sorrow. He watches over the lonely, the sick, the rejected, the grieving. His vision is not limited to the physical. He sees the soul, the motive, the hidden wound that no one else even notices. And in seeing, he cares, not passively, but actively, though often invisibly. It is one of the greatest acts of faith to continue praying when it feels as though no one is listening. But the truth is, every prayer, spoken or unspoken, enters into the eternal ear. In the hidden spaces of divine will, God stores the cries of his children. He is not like men who grow weary of hearing repeated requests. He is not like kings of this world who are too busy to tend to the hurting. He is a father and a good one who is moved by the sufferings of his children, even when his plan calls for waiting. It may not feel like it, but the delay is not the denial. The silence is not rejection. Often it is preparation. Pain has a way of sharpening our ears. It tunes the soul to listen for whispers rather than shouts. And God, in his mercy, sometimes draws us through seasons where the only way forward is trust. We may not feel him, but we must know he is there. We may not hear him, but we must believe he is speaking in ways beyond language. He may not act on our timetable, but he never abandons those who call upon him in truth. What the heart interprets as divine distance may in fact be the closest presence we have ever known. He is near to the broken-hearted. He binds the wounds of the crushed, but his nearness is not always emotional. It is spiritual. It is a nearness that sustains rather than excites, that comforts rather than overwhelms. There is a hidden strength in being known by God, even when we feel forgotten. The world may overlook your pain. People may dismiss your cries, but God is never indifferent. He is not constrained by time, nor pressured by urgency. His love is perfect, and so is his hearing. There has never been a groan of grief, a whisper of worry, or a breath of prayer that went unnoticed by him. He collects them all like treasures. He hears not only what we say, but what we cannot say. The words choked by tears, the prayers that dissolve into silence, he interprets them fully. True faith means surrendering the impossible into God's hands, not striving to control it yourself. There is something in the human spirit that resists surrender. From childhood, we are trained to hold tight, to fix things ourselves, to solve problems with intellect, strategy, and effort. Yet, when we come to the end of ourselves, when we face what we cannot change, control, or comprehend, a different kind of invitation arises. The call to place what we cannot carry into the hands of God. It is not weakness to surrender, it is wisdom. Faith begins not when we believe God exists, but when we trust him enough to let go of what we cannot master. The impossible does not bow to human effort. It bends only when we cease to grasp and begin to believe. Surrendering to God is not retreating from life, but stepping into a greater reality where our limitations no longer define the outcome. It is to say, this burden is too great for me, but not too great for you. To place our impossibilities in God's hands is to recognize the boundary between what belongs to us and what belongs to him. There are circumstances we cannot shift, hearts we cannot change, futures we cannot predict. And yet, how tightly we cling to them, as if anxiety might serve as a solution. Control becomes an illusion we chase in the name of responsibility. But there is a peace that comes only when we stop striving to play the part of God in our own lives and start trusting the one who already holds the beginning and the end. There are many things we are called to do: love, obey, speak truth, walk faithfully. But there are also things we are called to relinquish. The outcome is not always ours to determine. The fruit is not always ours to force. The result is not always ours to witness. It is a humbling realization that our strength, no matter how noble, will eventually fail. Human wisdom has limits. Even the sharpest minds falter when faced with mystery. The impossible brings us face to face with the end of self-reliance and the beginning of divine reliance. This is not passive resignation, but active trust. It is the placing of the unknown into the hands of the known. The one who knit the cosmos together does not tremble at our impossibilities. The one who spoke galaxies into being is not intimidated by what confounds us. We may falter in our confidence, but he never falters in his sovereignty. There are seasons when faith looks like action, bold and fearless. But there are also seasons when faith looks like waiting, weeping, and letting go. There is a quiet courage required to stop forcing what is not ours to fix. And there is a deeper intimacy with God that is often found in the stillness after surrender. We discover He is not only the God of the miraculous, but also the God of the process, the God of the in-between, the God of the not yet. To trust Him is to believe that He is doing more behind the scenes than we could ever orchestrate in the spotlight. Our job is not to manipulate outcomes, but to remain faithful with what we are given, and to give over what we are not. Letting go does not mean giving up. It means giving over. It means placing our hands off the controls and placing our confidence in the one who sees all, knows all, and loves perfectly. The hands that bore the scars of sacrifice are not careless. They are capable, compassionate, and committed to our good in ways we cannot always see. Faith in God does not mean certainty about circumstances. It means certainty about His character. We surrender not because we are defeated, but because we are convinced that His wisdom exceeds our understanding. And in that surrender, the impossible becomes His responsibility. The impossible becomes possible when we trust God's power over our limitations. There is something profoundly liberating in realizing that what we call impossible is often only a reflection of our own limitations, not God's. The boundaries we encounter, whether physical, emotional, or spiritual, are not the boundaries of heaven. We are creatures confined by time, logic, and what our senses can grasp. But God is not so confined. What seems unmovable to us is dust to Him. The walls we cannot climb, the mountains we cannot move, the outcomes we cannot orchestrate, these are nothing before the one who breathes stars and speaks worlds into being. When we place our faith in that God, the impossible begins to bend beneath the weight of divine intention. We are not asked to be strong enough, smart enough, or brave enough to do what only God can do. We are asked to trust, to obey, to believe, and to step forward in that belief, even when it looks foolish to the world around us. Too often, we let the impossible paralyze us. We see the giant, and we feel like grasshoppers. We measure our problems by the strength of our own hands instead of by the strength of the God who calls us. But Scripture is full of stories where the impossible gave way to those who dared to trust. Seas parted for people who walked in obedience. Bread multiplied in the hands of the grateful. The sun stood still for a prayer offered in faith. These are not fairy tales. They are testimonies of what happens when human limitation meets divine intervention. And yet we, in our modern sophistication, often dismiss such things. We lower our expectations to match our fears. We convince ourselves that miracles are for other people, or other times, or other stories. But what if the impossible is not a wall, but an invitation? What if the limits we face are not signs of failure, but thresholds to something greater than we can imagine? We serve a God who delights in the improbable, who often waits until the last possible moment so that no one may boast in human strength. His timing is different. His methods are unexpected. He may not take away the Red Sea, but he may part it. He may not remove the furnace, but he will walk in it. He may not prevent the storm, but he will still the waves. The impossible does not intimidate him. It is the canvas on which he paints his most profound works. The challenge for us is not whether God can do the impossible, but whether we will live as if he can. Will we step out of the boat even when the waves rage? Will we raise our hands in worship even when the answer hasn't come? Will we move forward in obedience even when the odds scream defeat? Doing the impossible requires more than courage. It requires conviction, a settled assurance that God's power is not theoretical, but real, present, active, and available. We do not serve a retired creator, but a present Redeemer. His arm has not grown short, and his love has not grown cold. We are not called to understand every detail, but to walk by faith through the unknown. The impossible is not something we do alone. It is something we do with him, or not at all. And when we move with him, when we trust that he goes before us, behind us, and within us, we find strength not our own, peace beyond comprehension, and victory that defies explanation. In that sacred partnership, the limits of man encounter the limitless God, and there, in that collision, the impossible begins to crumble,